Welcome back. Time to turn to our insiders for their take on the big political issues of the day. Joining us tonight, Republican consultant Alfredo Rodriguez and former Democratic State Senator Malcolm Graham. Thank you both so much for joining us and welcome back to the program.
Thanks for being here.
So let's take a look up at Washington. Congress is coming back into session. They have approximately 3 days to make some major decisions to avoid a government shutdown. Let's start with the fact, one of the big things, obviously, when we're talking government shutdown are the spending issues. Alfredo, I'll start with you. They need to make some decisions about spending caps and how much over the cap limit they're about to go. Republicans and Democrats are not at all on board with each other on this issue.
Well, first let me say I don't think that the government is going to shut down. I do think that we're going to come to an agreement to keep the government open, whether it's a short-term CR or some miraculous event that we are able to get a long-term funding bill through and passed and signed by the president. I do not think that the government's going to shut down. But you're absolutely right. The numbers and the figures are, there's some disparity between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans want to fund the military adequately, appropriately, to make sure that we have a robust and able military to compensate our soldiers and our intelligence community. And Republicans are putting that as a number one priority. They're also putting a number one priority on border security. Immigration has been an issue that has befuddled Congress for more than a decade. President George W. Bush attempted immigration reform and failed. President Barack Obama attempted immigration reform and failed. And what I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt is that there will be an immigration reform bill signed into law in 2018, and Donald Trump will be responsible for having brought the parties together and getting that done that previous presidents were unable to get done.
Malcolm, I'll come back to the immigration issue in a minute. I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of coming up with a budget or a continuing resolution. It almost seems as if right now that's what we can expect out of Congress is continuing resolutions. It's been a while since we've had an actual budget bill.
I think you're right. I think with 3 days to go before a decision has to be made, I think we're headed towards a continuing resolution, because that's what Congress does best, right? They kick the ball down the street for another day. There has to be some type of collaboration, but as you know, it's a Republican Party there up there. Both the House has the votes to do this themselves. We hope that there will be some bipartisanship along with it, that the president keeps stepping in it and preventing collaboration and cooperation among the parties. And I think that's what you're seeing now in Washington over the last several days, that the president seems to step in it again and prevents the type of collaboration and partnership necessary to move the country forward. So a continuing resolution is probably the only thing that the majority party can muster up to move the country forward for another 30 days or so.
And Malcolm, we'll go back to what Alfredo was talking about as far as immigration. Obviously, the immigration does not need to be tied into any continuing resolution or budget bill, but it seems as if both sides in their own right are tying these two issues together. They want to get something done. This deferred action for childhood arrivals, the DACA program, is set to run out in March. What's your sense from what you're watching happening in Washington, whether or not there's going to be a resolution before March?
I'm not sure. That's a self-imposed deadline by the president himself. Certainly last week, what occurred in the Oval Office didn't help matters at all. The two sides have to come together. The Democratic Party is really wanting to do what we can to do to help the kids to move this issue forward. I think that's what the American people are expecting us to do. And so hopefully it certainly won't be a clean DACA bill by itself, but we're trying to move this thing progressively forward with the help from the White House. But again, that seems to be problematic at best.
So before we continue the conversation, we've heard Malcolm bring it up twice of what the president did or did not say last week during these immigration talks. Today, DHS Secretary Christian Nielsen is testifying before Congress, including in front of Senator Dick Durbin and others who were in the room with her last week, along with President Donald Trump, when he said these inflammatory remarks. Let's listen to what Senator Burker had to say to DHS Secretary Nielsen about her response of saying that she doesn't remember exactly what the president said.
For you not to feel that hurt and that pain and to dismiss some of the questions of my colleagues, saying I've already answered that line of questions when tens of millions of Americans are hurting right now because of what they're worried about what happened in the White House. That's unacceptable to me. There are threats in this country. People plotting. I receive enough death threats to know the reality.
So, Alfredo, obviously, this has all been getting a lot of attention. It's certainly been stirring up emotions with folks. Did the president set back some of these negotiations, or is this just a side issue that's going on right now in Washington?
Well, I think we need to get beyond the histrionics of all of this. Like you said, this is something that has been dominating the news for the past 3 days. We need to get beyond the histrionics of, what was said, what wasn't said, the mind reading of, what the sentiment was, what the sentiment may have been, what the sentiment was not. We need to focus on the issue at hand. And like I said earlier, immigration has been something that has caused a great deal of discord in the Congress for more than a decade. President George W. Bush attempted to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill and failed. President Barack Obama attempted to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill and failed. President Trump is going to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill. We will address DACA, we will address border security, we will address chain migration, and we will address the lottery visa. All of these things are something that is going to be accomplished in 2018 by Republicans, by President Trump, and Republicans and President Trump have invited Democrats to the table to negotiate in good faith. But when they come to the White House and offer something well beyond the parameters that have been set, of course there's going to be some heated exchanges and some words that are going to be exchanged in that situation.
Malcolm, we only have about 30 seconds left, but I'll give you the last word on this. Should we just get past what was or was not said in that room in the White House?
We just celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day on yesterday. There's no sidestepping racism and discrimination, and that's what came out of the meeting in the White House last week. Certainly we want to have immigration reform, but we want to make sure that it's a reform that invites and accepts anybody from anywhere throughout this world who seeks to have a better way of life. And certainly the President of the United States on this week set that back several steps.
Okay, Malcolm Graham, Alfredo Rodriguez, I want to thank you both so much for joining us tonight. And that's it for tonight. As always, if it's on Jones Street or Main Street, you'll find it right here on Capitol Tonight. Have a great evening.